Welcome to our channel. Cameron Diaz is eternally young, but back in action is stuck in the past. I can't help but wonder what exactly it was about the screenplay or the paycheck for Seth Gordon's Netflix action comedy Back in Action that convinced an A-lister like Cameron Diaz to put what had stretched into being an 11-year big screen retirement on hold. Certainly, there's nothing unique or particularly novel or engaging in that script, nothing that should have jumped out at her as a project that demanded to be made. The woman certainly isn't Oscar fishing here. Surely, in the past decade and change, a performer like Diaz has been offered myriad opportunities to return to Hollywood in major roles, but she resisted them all until now, in order to play a part barely any different from the same kind of broad, studio action comedy fare she specialized in throughout the early 2000s, in Charlie's Angels and beyond. It's a bit like her intent is to act as if zero time has passed in the last 2 decades, and Back in Action is much the same in its approach, a dated and unambitious, but technically proficient action flick with decent leads, but not a ton for them to do. This sort of unambitious malaise and pedestrian workmanship seems to have become a frequent stumbling block for mid-budget streaming features of this nature, and Back in Action in particular feels oddly constrained by budget, as if there was barely money available to make a film after divvying up funds between its recognizable cast members, who also include Jamie Foxx, Glenn Close, Kyle Chandler, and Andrew Scott. This underfunded impression comes across as a pinched and small-stakes reliance on more intimate action scenes than the audience might expect from a would-be blockbuster-style premise starring the likes of Diaz and Foxx. It wants to look expensive, to look gaudy, but the money just isn't up there on the screen. The closest thing to a genuinely big action set piece, accomplished largely through garish CGI, is shoved into the first 10 minutes, perhaps in an effort to dissuade the audience from feeling like they're subsequently being shortchanged. The Back in Action premise was no doubt pitched as Mr. and Mrs. Smith with kids, and that's the easiest way to get it across. Diaz and Foxx play Emily and Matt, no time for last names, 2 former CIA spies/secret agents who go off the grid together after kindling a romance and becoming pregnant. The opening 15 minutes, set 15 years ago, establishes their super spy/human weapon credentials, although it's understandably a little difficult to accept 52-year-old Cameron Diaz as 37-year-old Cameron Diaz, when she would have been fresh off the oddly similar night and day. If anything, her styling makes her look younger when the action snaps 15 years forward, to when the married duo have 2 kids, rebellious 14-year-old Alice, McKenna Roberts, and brightly amiable younger brother Leo, Ryland Jackson. Don't expect any more adjectives describing those kids. I've already used up every bit of characterization assigned to them. Rest assured, this is a film about Diaz and Foxx proving that they're still toned and viable enough to kick some ass, and in that capacity Back in Action is actually pretty successful. The stunt work and choreography are both quite slick, seamlessly incorporating those A-list faces and their stunt doubles, and thankfully not being entirely possessed by the kind of hyperactive editing that renders many modern action scenes outside of the likes of the John Wick franchise as the visual equivalent of a grand mal seizure. When the two are clotheslining goons and breaking backs, Back in Action comes to life in bursts of delight, being surprisingly tactile in the thud of a fist dug into a crumpled midsection. With that said, those action sequences are often taking place in relatively humble locales, a gas station, a hallway, etc., rather than being worked into bigger and bolder set pieces with higher stakes, as they would be in the films this one is emulating. There's even a setup for a Winter Soldier-style elevator fight scene that simply cuts to the aftermath as Diaz and Foxx depart a group of slumped bodies. Would writer-director Gordon say that this is intended for comic effect, a subversion of a fight scene we've seen several other times in recent memory? I'm sure he would, but that doesn't stop it from simultaneously feeling like a Netflix cost-saving decision, disguised as a punchline. Worse still is the flagrant use of embarrassing licensed music through almost all of these action sequences, a motley collection of painfully on-the-nose vintage love tunes and swing numbers that range from Etta James' At Last, to Dean Martin's Ain't That a Kick in the Head, to James Brown's Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, all designed to offer some kind of faux humorous contrast to each shootout or pummeling.